Hello world, it's Berto Prey 5 Cupla, and welcome to my review of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 1, The Broken Circle. So we left off at the end of last season where number 1, aka Una Chin Riley, aka Rebecca Romaine, was arrested for lying about what species she was. Apparently, she wasn't human. She looked human. She seemed human. She seemingly grew up amongst humans, but it turns out she was some other species, which I forgot, but wasn't new to Strange New Worlds. Apparently, it's a species that had been on Star Trek Enterprise before, and for whatever reason, they look human, or she looks human, but the species as a whole practices genetic engineering, and because she was genetically engineered in some way at some point in her past, she was not eligible to join Starfleet because even in the 24th century, that is the big taboo. You know, that's the one group Starfleet has yet to bring into the giant cosmic rainbow of species is the genetically engineered. So she could not legally join Starfleet, and she was arrested for being quote unquote augment. Unlike the other character they brought in for Strange New Worlds, the great ancestor, or great ancestor, perhaps, of Khan, Christina Chang, who plays Lan Noonien-Singh. Now, even though we all know that Khan Noonien-Singh was genetically altered, I guess she is enough times removed that she doesn't count as being an augment, even though she clearly comes from augment DNA. But for whatever reason, Laan, who seemed to display augmented abilities in Strange New Worlds, in the ability to attack, she seemed to have superior strength, superior intelligence. We'll see in this episode superior ability to hold down alcohol, but that, we are told, basically is just because she's a proud, strong woman, not so much that she was genetically altered or that her family tree genetically altered in the past. She is perfectly fine to join Starfleet, but Una, for some reason, is not. Anyway, that was how we ended last season, and if you thought the first episode of this season was going to be the long-awaited trial to bring Una back into Starfleet, which, let's face it, we all know she wins because she wouldn't be in this season if she didn't, well, you would be wrong. And you know what? They subverted my expectations. I thought, no way, they were going to put off the trial, but sure enough, there is no trial. This is not the episode with the trial, and Rebecca Romaine is barely in this episode, except for the first couple minutes where she and Captain Pike talk on long-range communications about the fact that she's having trouble finding a lawyer to take her case. And Captain Pike is also interested in her coming back He can't, she would be such a loss to the Enterprise that he could not imagine going on without her. And she's like, don't start a fight you can't win. You taught me that. And he's like, I don't care. He is such a Boy Scout that he is like, they didn't start this. We didn't start this. They did. And I'm going to make things right. Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I'm going to go speak to her in person, as if the person who is, the representative of the Federation, like she has a choice, like the prosecutor has much of a choice in prosecuting the case. He thinks that if he goes talks to the prosecutor or even the judge in person, that is somehow going to fix this. And oh, my brain hurt as Una said, oh, and you're going to waste 3 days going across the quadrant, across the entire quadrant to talk to somebody. You're going to waste 3 days. And I'm like, 3 days to cross the entire quadrant in TOS times, pre-TOS times? Are they nuts? And then it's like, well, maybe if the Enterprise is the fastest ship and the Federation isn't as big as we know it to be later, maybe 3 days. And then he's like, 2.5 if we take one of the new shuttles. So he's not even going in the Enterprise, and he's not even going, he's going in a shuttle. He's going in a shuttle, and he is going to cross the entire quadrant. And I know the Federation literally doesn't span the entire Alpha quadrant, or Beta quadrant for that matter. But however much it does span, he's got to cross the entirety of Federation space in 2.5 days on a frickin' shuttlecraft. If they could cross the entirety of the Federation in 2.5 days on a shuttlecraft in whatever year this is, then Voyager should have been home in about 2 weeks. Voyager should have been able to make it home in 2 fucking weeks. I know it doesn't matter. It's just words. They don't care. I got to step back and listen. These people think, oh, there's Bird O' Prey 5. He hate watches Star Trek. False. False. I watch Star Trek. It doesn't become hate until they fuck it up. It doesn't become hate until I see shit that makes me want to hate it. I don't want to hate Star Trek. I don't want to ruin a perfectly good Thursday. That's not why I watch Star Trek. I don't watch Star Trek to hate watch Star Trek. Okay, do I have a pretty good idea I'm going to hate it before I watch it? Sometimes when I've seen previews, or, the same group of people have given me over and over and over every reason to hate it after the fact. But I don't come, expecting. Well, I don't come happy. I do not come thrilled to hate what I'm about to see. And I always hope to be surprised. And once in a while, I have been. But this episode, it does not start out well. I mean, and even before Una and Captain Pike are speaking, we just see that the Enterprise is at spacedock, and there are dozens and dozens. I thought they were fighters at first. I thought, what is this? The Enterprise is being attacked by fighters in spacedock? Apparently, no, they're not fighters. we're to believe that there are hundreds of tiny ships, I guess, in constant movement around spacedock. And by spacedock, the Enterprise is parked on the outside of a space station. What I assume will grow into the spacedock we see in the Star Trek movies, from where they steal the Enterprise in Star Trek 3. But you know what? If you thought the first time the Enterprise was stolen was Star Trek 3 from spacedock, no. Apparently, they're going to steal the Enterprise today, but we'll get back to that. So it's on the outside, it's not on the inside. And there's tons and tons of tiny little ships and tons of shuttles, and they're all flying within feet, meters of each other. They pass within 3, 4, 5 meters of each other, going in all different directions. An absurd scene, completely. Zero F's to give about safety. There would be collisions all the time if this was really going on. And they're in space. It's called space. You know what you have plenty of in space? Space. For fuck's sake. There are people on the New York State Thruway who give more room between them and the vehicle next to them than these people were giving in this scene in space. It doesn't make any sense as to why these little ships would be flying so closely next to each other. If it was the Orville, it would be considered funny, but anyway, I guess it's supposed to make us say, oh, wow, well, look at how fancy, look at this ship, and where is this space station? Apparently it's like outside Jupiter, but you see the Enterprise. It's a nice shot of the Enterprise, except for all these, it looks like flies. It looks like flies attacking, and forgive me for saying this, an African child. You know what I mean. I mean, we've seen the videos. They take you to Africa before. Not so much these days, but 20, 30 years ago, they were on TV all the time. And like, please send money. And you'd see the flies all over the people. You'd feel bad for them. And you'd send them $5 a month and think, oh, I'm a good person. I'm supporting an African village. I don't see those commercials anymore. I guess they worked. Anyway, if you wanted to watch Star Trek Enterprise to see Anson Mount as Captain Pike, or Una, Becca Romaine as number 1, this was not your episode. Because after the first scene, they're gone. They're gone. Pike goes off in his shuttle. Una makes her call. She gets her 1 call a day, maybe. I don't know what. And Pike puts Spock in charge. Now, he's in charge at spacedock. He's going to be 3 days off. The Enterprise is supposed to be in spacedock the entire time. And so it's, for whatever reason, it's Spock's. It's Kirk's. Kirk is coming, but not this episode. It's Spock's first time in command, in the captain's seat, without Pike on board, I guess. And he's a bit nervous. He's the acting captain. Yeah. And Spock is like, well, half the crew isn't here. We don't have a chief engineer. We don't have a head of security. The engineer, because Hemmer died in the last episode of last season, and their chief of security took a sabbatical because she had to go check up on, I suppose, we learned some kids' parents. Um, so Spock goes to Dr. Mbenga, and he's complaining about back pain and neck pain and whatever. And Dr. Mbenga's like, you have what us humans call stress. And like, Dr. Mbenga, do you really, you know he's half human? It just doesn't seem right for Mbenga to say what us humans call stress. Anyway, Mbenga says, well, when you were fighting the Gorn, you had to let all your hatred through, and now you have to deal with emotions. And Spock's like, well, I'm concerned, but the emotions are going to cloud my judgment. And Spock's like, I don't want to deal with emotions. And Mbenga says, I want to offer you a more human therapy. And like, what is he going to bring? And Dr. Mbenga brings a fucking space guitar to Spock, the instrument that Spock is known famously for playing in the original series. Well, it was a gift from Dr. Mbenga. So Dr. Mbenga is the one who taught Spock. Well, he didn't teach Spock how to play. Spock just naturally can play as soon as he's gifted the guitar. I know it's not a guitar, but it is anyway. He was monitoring Spock's vital signs, and as soon as Spock started playing it, his heart rate went down. And then Nurse Chapel walks in, not our father's Nurse Chapel, the new sexy Nurse Chapel. And as soon as she walks in, Spock's heart rate goes right back up, bum, 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 bum. And Dr. Mbenga realizes that, hey, that Nurse Chapel, she turns that Spock guy on. And he's like, oh, wow. He thought that this is some interesting. So then we go to the bridge, and there is the fattest Starfleet person in a Starfleet uniform I've ever seen, and I'm sorry. You just don't get to see a lot of fat people in a Starfleet uniform. Usually because the uniforms were made not to fit them. You would think, well, I mean, are there even fat people in the future? You would hope that food is made in such a way that one just doesn't get fat, but or that there's medications that you could take to prevent or treat it, but it's a whole, and this, oh my God, this opens up an entire Pandora's box of what should and shouldn't be in the future. I mean, should there be fat people in the future? I mean, you're always going to have some people that want to eat more than others. But on the other hand, you should have modern medicine that should be able to treat that. I mean, it's not healthy being a certain weight. I mean, there's certain weights, sure, you could be a little bit rounder than somebody and it still be, healthy. But at some point, it's just the truth. And you're like, well, we can't say that now, though, because this is 2023, and we have to have body affirming imagery so that, even if you are 350 pounds and 4'10" or 5'10", yeah, you could still join Starfleet. I mean, it's not like it's a military organization. It's not like we're going to test how far you can run or do pull-ups. Although I thought they actually did do those things. I mean, in the original series, in sick bay, which remember should be this ship in sick bay. There should be that goddamn thing on the wall that you use your legs and push against to exercise, so Dr. McCoy can see that you're in peak physical shape, like a god of a man that William Shatner was in his Captain Kirk TOS days. He would go to town on those leg things in the wall. Well, this guy who we just saw, not so much. I mean, and then, oh my God, like, that's a topic for another time. But there's lots of things that you should say, well, though we have in 2023 in abundance that maybe we wouldn't have in the future. But like I said, that's a topic for another time. So we get another scene, a weird scene, where a man, one of them men fellows, comes over to Uhura, Ensign Uhura, and says, I got to upgrade your station or something. And Uhura is like, well, if you do that, we're going to be offline. And he's like, yeah, but only take a few minutes. And she's like, well, I've got to set up a backup. And I'm thinking, Uhura, if you knew this was scheduled, and it was, you should have set the backup already if you really needed it. And the guy tells Uhura, what the fuck are you doing? We're in spacedock. How many hails are you getting that you have to set up a backup for a few minutes of work? Like, just go fucking take a coffee break and let me do my goddamn job. But of course he doesn't say that because he would be right. No, Uhura has to hold her ground and like, hey, I need to set up, this is my station. I need to set up a backup. You're just going to have to wait. And then the other two women on the bridge, like, give her that look, like, yeah, that's it. You tell that man to wait. Make him sit. You're in charge, Ensign. Thankfully, there's no command officer on the bridge. There's no Captain Pike or even Spock sitting in the captain's chair to say, hey, you get out of the way and let this man do his job. Yeah, you're right. Nobody should be getting hails in spacedock. I'm sure spacedock has somebody listening for hails, but not in this universe, right? Because this universe makes no logical sense. So Uhura tells this man to go get the fuck out of here. And of course, she's in the right to do so. And of course, she gets a hail that was aimed somehow specifically at the Enterprise. And only she would have picked it up. Now, had the Enterprise had to go off on a last-minute mission, or if the Enterprise went to a different space dock, or God knows what could have happened, then I suppose this very important message that only she would have been picked up would have been lost forever, and the entire fate of the quadrant would have been at stake. But Uhura comes in to Spock's quarters, and she's like, did I hear music? Well, Spock was playing his guitar. And so Spock is like, why do you have to come here? Couldn't you have just messaged us? And she's like, well, comms are being rebooted. So he's okay, what do you have to say? And she's like, there's a message that originated in the Kahar system. And Spock is like, well, that's that's on the edge of Klingon space. And she's like, yes, it is. She thought it was a random shifting signal, but she ran it through some kind of thing. If you thought it was a random pattern, why would you run it through something? You just constantly run everything through the system just to see? Anyway, the point is that Uhura, and only Uhura, ever would have guessed it's actually a distress signal. And she hands it over to Spock, and he's like, who's it from? And it's from La'an. So it's a distress signal that's been signed, I guess, from La'an. Now, La'an has been off the ship for a number of months. And so Spock, I guess, communications comes back on, or this would have been a commercial break, so we would have forgotten the fact that comms were down. So now comms are up, and Spock, instead of getting off the ship and walking to Admiral Robert April's office, gets Robert April up on the view screen, and he says, but Spock is saying that if it is from Lieutenant Noonien-Singh, it's really important. And of course, Admiral April, being an evil admiral, he's like, well, we can't go. She's been on voluntary leave for months, and that planet, Spock is like, it's a dire message. It says Enterprise. It's this dangerous situation on Coulter 4. The resources of the Enterprise are critical, an anti-Federation threat. That's all it says, with, I guess, her name. And Captain April is like, what do you know about Kahar 4? And he's like, well, it's on the edge of Klingon space. And Admiral April is like, it's a big dilithium producer. And since the war, the colony is governed by both the Federation and the Klingons. Some schmuck, somebody somewhere, decided that the Federation gets to run the planet for 30 days, and then the Klingons get to run the planet for 30 days. And back and forth and back and forth. And even though that could never, ever work out in real life, that's what they're going with. So Robert April, Admiral April is saying that if the Federation shows up while the Klingons are in charge, it'd be an act of war. It could restart the war with the Klingons. And we're told however many, 850 million people dead in Michael Burnham's war. They don't call it that, but we're reminded over how bloody and gruesome the war was with the Klingons. So then the next scene is the entirety of the regular crew, Dr. Mbanga, Uhura, Ortega's, some Asian woman who I forgot who she was, relatively new, and Spock and Nurse Chapel, and Spock is telling him that basically our former comrade's in trouble. She's indicated aid is essential for the safety of the Federation, and I need your help to get the inspectors off our ship. By the way, the Enterprise is full of quote-unquote inspectors who are repairing the ship. They're all from the space dock. And they're like, what? Spock's like, I need your help getting the inspectors off the ship to achieve our objective. And like some people are like, what do you mean objective? He's like, I think it's pretty clear what I mean. We have to steal the Enterprise. So there it is. The first person to steal the Enterprise wasn't Captain Kirk in Star Trek 3. It was actually Spock himself. Spock himself. So when the captain of the Excelsior is like, how can there be a yellow alert in spacedock? And we hear, Captain, somebody is stealing the Enterprise. They should have been like, that'll be the second time somebody stole the Enterprise from spacedock. Anyway, Spock says, but I'm not going to ask you to do something you don't agree with. So if you don't support this or you want to report this, I won't stand in your way. And Nurse Chapel is like happy. Ortega's is happy. Uhura is happy. And Benga is happy. And they're all like, yes, we're all in. We're all in to steal the Enterprise. So we're 10 minutes in, and we get the last of Pike for this episode. He gives his, opening credits, explore strange new worlds, seek out new life and new civilization, boldly go where no one has gone before. So we get back from the opening credits, and I'm sorry, the Asian woman, name unknown, is in engineering. She quietly puts some codes into the computer, hits enter, and immediately we get a warning, coolant leak detected. And we go to like red alert, everybody is ordered off the ship immediately. And we have a new character, Commander Pelia. Commander Pelia, played by Carol Kane. Carol Kane, I knew her best as the crazy landlord lady from The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. Comedian, best as I know her. I know comedians and Star Trek don't always go well. Poor Jet Reno from Star Trek Discovery certainly did not set things off. But I had a feeling, I had this feeling that I was going to like this character played by Carol Kane, because I do like her. I think she's a funny woman. And I thought that there would be a place for her in my heart on this crew. But I gotta say, maybe, but it's not off to a good start. It's not off to a good start. So jumping ahead a little here. So Carol Kane, Pelia is her character name. Pelia is going to be the new chief engineer of the Enterprise for a little while. Her backstory is that she taught at Starfleet Academy. In fact, she taught like warp engine or warp field theory. The warp core breach or whatever that they're pretending is happening is 100% up her alley. So while everybody else who's not from the Enterprise is running around in a panic, Pelia is 100% sure that this is bullshit. And she realizes right from the start what it is that's going on. So she casually wanders onto the bridge, and Spock is like, "Do you not see what's going on? It's imperative you get off the ship." And she's like, "Well, here's the thing. Like, my whole team has been taking a look at your engines for 3 days, and they're in absolute perfect, pristine condition. So you want me to believe that they just randomly, this happened?" She's like, "Do you know the way to check if this is real? You check the I don't know." She makes up some techno babble, and Spock is like taken back a little, and she's to save us both some time. At the end of this, she's like, basically, let's cut to the chase. You're faking this because you need to steal the Enterprise, right? And she's like, "I want to come with you. I have my reasons, and I'll get to those reasons later. But I want to come with you." And Spock's like, "Okay, fine. You got us." And so then she suggests that uh, they vent something from the warp nacelles, and like they wouldn't have thought to do it without her. And so they vent it, and as soon as they vent it, the space station realizes something bad is going on. Like, they don't know that there's a red alert aboard the Enterprise right now. They don't know that the warp engines are about to blow up. It isn't until the Enterprise physically starts venting gas from the warp nacelles that they realize, oh shit, there's a problem. And Admiral April, I just can't say Admiral April. The double A's, they don't sound right. Captain April, Commodore April, but Admiral April, is it Commodore? Maybe he is Commodore April. Whatever he is, he finally gets on the phone. He's like, "You are ordered to take the Enterprise away from spacedock, to save it in case it blows up." Now, you would think they'd say, beam everybody off and take a skeleton crew and then beam back. But no, they're ordered. And once he gets his order to leave spacedock, Spock smiles because he knows he's not coming back. And lo and behold, the Enterprise doesn't blow up. But does anybody chase him? No, no, no. The Enterprise just leaves and nobody gives a shit. No ship is sent to chase after them. No, galactic warning is put out that, hey, there's a rogue ship out there. Don't trust these people. No, no, no. But anyway, while Pelia and Spock are talking, she does mention that she knew Spock, and she knew Spock was Amanda Grayson's son, as Amanda is, of course, Spock's human mother. So it turns out that Pelia and Amanda have a history together, and that'll also come out a little bit later in the episode. So yeah, she wants ionized plasma to be vented from the warp nacelles. Pelia has this really strange way of speaking. It's not doing it for me. So Starbase 1 is blowing the clamps, says Uhura, and they're ordered to put distance between them and the station. And blowing the clamps looks a hell of a lot like disconnecting. And for a ship that's venting plasma, or should be, they make a very, they turn around rather than just go in reverse. So Pelia officially says that she wants to be the chief engineer for this mission. And she says it's been 100 years since she's gone out with engines of her own. So she is she looks human, but she's not human. She is an extremely long-living species, the details of which we don't have yet. And Ortega's is like 100 years. Really? She's like laughing. She's like, can she really be that old? And she says, it's a long story, a really long story. Pelia says that. And now Uhura picks it up. She's like, that's the accent. Uhura picks up the accent. She's like, you're lanthanite. You're lanthanite. And Pelia says, guilty as charged. And she waves as the turbo lift goes away. And like Uhura just has a smirk on her face. So the rest of us, like I'm like Lackean. What the fuck did she just say? She's Lackean. So I mosey over to Memory Alpha. And like, what the fuck is it? What did I forget this reference? No. At the time, early this morning, when this episode aired, there had yet to be an entry for Memory Alpha for what the hell Lethakian. And I had it. I spelled it correctly. I have the closed captioning up. The thing did not exist. The species did not exist in Memory Alpha as of 5 a.m. Eastern this morning. Maybe it's there now, but this is a completely new species. So the details of which, we'll just skip ahead. So apparently these lanthanites were a species that look human, and get this, they lived on Earth amongst humans for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So they were on Earth now. They were on Earth in the 20th century, the 21st century, probably the 18th, 19th centuries, probably going back to Jesus Christ, probably for 2,000 years. Lathanites, I wouldn't be surprised if she's 10,000 years old. And they've been living on Earth, and later they'll talk about how, wow, I really respected that your species lived on Earth pretending to be human or amongst humans for so many years. So that's the Strange New Worlds just decided to retcon that Earth already has extraterrestrials. Now you could say, well, Guinan was living in San Francisco with Mark Twain. Fair enough. But, and the thing is, I was already getting Guinan vibes. Like I was already getting the Guinan vibes from Pelia before we found out she was a longly lived species and she was on Earth. So just think of all the aliens that have been on Earth for the centuries before we even, the ancient aliens theory guy from the History Channel, he doesn't look as crazy. He doesn't look as crazy anymore. At least not in the Star Trek universe, or at least not in whatever timeline Strange New Worlds takes place in. Because, call me a purist, but I would have preferred my Earth history where Earth was actually human for quite a while until the Vulcans landed, if not in Bozeman, Montana, then in Carbon Creek at least, or when the Ferengi crash landed in Roswell, of course. But whatever. So now we have apparently Lathanites, and now they're known to Starfleet, Lathanites, and they teach. Not only are they allowed in Starfleet, they teach at the academy. So it's if you're a human and you extend your lifetime by a couple 100 years using genetic engineering, you're not allowed to join Starfleet. But if you're a Lathanite who lied to humans for countless generations, you're perfectly allowed in Starfleet. Also, like, how the hell did they not know Una was a different species? I mean, they had to go through they had to have multiple you have to be medically cleared to join Starfleet. You have to be medically cleared to get on a ship. Okay, multiple doctors would have had to do multiple tests on Una over the years. Are we supposed to believe that nobody realized she wasn't a human being? That there are species out there so alike to human beings that even doctors doing God knows what type of tests couldn't tell the difference? And if you can't tell the difference, are they really a different species? I don't think they are. I think that just means they're human. But anyway. So now we get the scene that was in the trailer where Ortega's asked Spock, "Are you going to say your thing?" And he's like, "My what?" Like, Pike says, "Punch it." Anybody who's in the chair, everybody always, or hit it. Captain Pike says, "Hit it." And somebody says, "The last captain like to say zoom." Ortega has been thinking of vamoose. But it's got to be about Spock. So Spock says, "I wish to make the ship go now." And I guess we're supposed to laugh. Like, there should be a laugh track. Like, this is young Sheldon. And he would say, "I want the ship to go now." And then we'd hear a laugh track. Ha 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 ha. It'd be funny because young Sheldon was saying it. Ortega says, "Aye, Captain." And we get the Enterprise goes to the shittiest warp we've seen. So, I mean, it takes 2.5 days to get across the quadrant on a shuttlecraft. So I assume this was probably 15 minutes later. We're on this Klingon alien planet. Now, like, why do okay, I understand alien planets are going to look alien. But this is just ridiculous. This looks like Warner Brothers. Is it Warner Brothers? Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers, Looney Tunes cartoons. Okay? The Roadrunner and the Coyote cartoons. The desert rocks, mountains look far more realistic than whatever batshit crazy things are on this planet. They have columns of rock that are inverted, almost like, are they just flying there? I mean, Are they trees? Are they rocks? I don't know what the fuck is going on. But what we do see on the surface are a mixture of humans, I guess, and Klingons. One of them has like literally like a fish tank, a what we would call a shitty, like 55-gallon fish tank that maybe a restaurant would use to keep its live lobsters in it. And it's got some dry ice in it to make the mist. And the guy is just mixing it with a fucking spoon. You got some open flames, but we got some Klingons. Klingons with ridges, Klingons that are not Kling orcs, Klingons that are much more similar to, but not exactly the Klingons from The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. Listen, they're different. These are clearly cheaper Klingons. Okay, I would say they are not as detailed as next gen DS9 Klingons, but they're perfectly adequate Klingons. Okay, I would imagine the makeup may be easier to put on. Whatever it is, I can live with these Klingons. They are so much better than Kling orcs of Star Trek Discovery. If these were the Klingons on Star Trek Discovery, nobody would have complained. Anyway, of course, there is a Klingon, and he's having a drinking contest, and it turns out under the hoodie, the hood is La'an, and she is besting a random Klingon at drinking blood wine. So God knows how many they both had already. And she's like, was that watered down? And he's getting angry. These are the smallest cups of blood wine I've ever seen. They would put DS9 blood wines cups to shame. DS9 blood wine would put these to shame. But he's drinking, he's pouring a lot down his beard. She calls him out on it. And he drinks one too many, and now he's going to vomit. He can't hold down his blood wine. And of course, she does really good. And of course, the person who pays her is another woman. And she doesn't want the payment. She's like, you know what I want. I don't want this payment. And the woman is like, I can set a meeting, but Greythax probably won't meet with you. She's like, let me worry about my own problems. Set it for tonight. So this Klingon woman who was in charge leaves. And oh, it's Dr. M'Benga. They sent Dr. M'Benga down. He looks over from a distance, puts his finger under his eye. And so, oh, everybody came down. So La'an is talking. They're all off in a corner somewhere. And what is the entire crew? Spock, Nurse Chapel, Dr. M'Benga, and Uhura. They're all down there talking. And La'an's like, you stole the Enterprise. She's like, wow, I would have lost so many bets. And Nurse Chapel's like, yeah, Vulcans can surprise you. Oh, by the way, I told you earlier that Spock totally has the hots for Nurse Chapel. At the end of last season, Spock was still, Spock and T'Pring are still a thing. And we knew Nurse Chapel was interested, and Spock was interested. But since last season, Spock is more interested. Like, I would say he's really into her. Anyway, Naan thanks them all for coming. So the little girl who survived the Gorn, Naan was trying to find her parents. That was from an episode last season. So Naan tracked her parents, I guess, to this godforsaken planet. Yep, she tracked them here. Their parents thought she was dead. That's why the parents stopped looking for their daughter. And Uhura's like, well, sounds like a happy ending. And Lon said, up until the war, this planet was a steady source of dilithium, and they sold it to both sides, like it does now. So they were supplying both the Klingons and the Federation with dilithium. But after the war started, with so many ships destroyed and dilithium constantly needing to be replenished, this became a promised land. Everybody moved in to make a ton of profit. Once again, and these are the Star Trek Discovery writers, also Strange New World writers, they're treating dilithium like oil, like literally like oil. And I don't think that was ever supposed to be the case. But whatever, it's a new day. So now the ore was auctioned off to the highest bidder at astronomical prices. Well, what did they do before? Did they not sell to the highest bidder? I mean, who the hell sells something for a lower price than they could? Okay? It's like, oh, you have a limited resource. Oh, okay. Well, I'll give you $5 for it. I know there's somebody over there offering 100, but I'll give you 5, and then tomorrow maybe I'll give you 6. And they'll say, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sell it to you for $5 because that just makes sense. So after the war, now a syndicate of ex-Federation and Klingon soldiers decided that they wanted to restart the war because it's more profitable. War is more profitable for business, and of course, those greedy capitalists, including on the Federation, they're going to restart the war. And half the town got sick from ion exposure. And Mbenga's like, well, that's not, you don't get sick from ion exposure from mining dilithium. But you can get sick from ion exposure created by photon torpedoes. That doesn't make any sense. A photon torpedo is a matter-antimatter explosion. Literally, there's no radiation, there's no waste. The whole point of antimatter is it annihilates the matter it comes in contact with, creating a giant explosion. There's no side effects, but whatever, fine. It doesn't. So there's photon torpedoes. 100 million Federation bodies was slaughtered for the war. And he says, for what, a parsec or two of space? And someone wants to resume the horrors of war for profit? It's terrible. So anyway, where's the parents? So they're in the med tent. So Spock says, keep a low profile. She has Na'an has a rendezvous with 3 potential buyers tonight. And Spock is like, Ensign Uhura and I will help. And she's like, Ensign? When did you become an ensign? And Uhura's like, well, you leave the ship, you miss. It makes perfect sense. So Dr. M'Benga and Nurse Chapel are looking for the girl, and they find her, and she recognizes them. She's like, I'm so happy to see you. My parents. And the mother is laying on a bed, or a makeshift bed, and she's sick. M'Benga tells Nurse Chapel to do something to repair genetic damage. And so she gives her an injection and says, this will have you feeling better in about a day. All she had to do was, type into the hypo spray, I guess, what to give her. So now we see a pretty crappy Klingon. I mean, like the Klingon, in the first scene, the ridges didn't even match the skin color of the actress's face. So another woman Klingon comes out and tells M'Benga and Nurse Chapel that you're coming with us under gun fire. Again, these stupid things, they're towering over the city. They look like they're going to fall over any minute, like they were drawn by a kindergartner. Like, draw an alien planet. Oh, okay. Well, gravity must not exist. So there's women speaking in Klingon. It's an obscure dialect, says Uhura. So once the translator works, then they start speaking English. And of course, Na'an says, you don't want bodies to pile up, do you? He's like, this is the Klingon shift. We don't care about bodies. So Na'an has Federation phasers, hand phasers. And the Klingons like, you said you were going to bring twice as many. And Na'an is like, now I'm going to charge twice as much. She's like, why do you need phasers? I thought Klingons hate Federation phasers. He's like, don't ask questions. In fact, she's like, I'm going to double the price. He gets pissed. He's like, what do you mean you're going to double the price for half of it? And he gets angry. And then Na'an picks up something that looks like a grenade. And she says it's some type of device. It's an antimatter detonator. And it's like, if she's gonna, lose the bottom half of your body if she lets go. Oh, he says, are you sure there's no Klingon blood in you? Because he respects her. Fine, he'll pay double. He'll pay double, but he needs more. She'll see what she can do. Okay, it makes zero sense. First, everybody already knows what he needs it for. It's a false flag. It's a false flag attempt. You don't need to ask, why does he need more phasers? But even more ridiculous is he knows it, she doesn't yet, but they're going tonight. If she doesn't have them already, what the fuck is the point? They're not gonna be there tomorrow. He needed the phasers. He has what he has. But guess what? Even more ridiculous is the plan is that they have a Federation starship. They have a whole fucking Federation starship hidden underground. And the starship is going to attack a Klingon cruiser in orbit. And that is going to be the plan to start the war. At no point in this plan are hand phasers ever used. But whatever. So then they asked Nhan what a antimatter detonator is, and she's like, that's not a thing, is it? And they're like, no, it isn't. Uhura realizes that whatever's happening, it's happening tomorrow. She's like, should we call Starfleet? And Spock is like, no, I don't want to talk to April until we have absolute proof. So Spock, oh my God, I don't know who this, like, I don't know if this is a non-binary character or what, but this is one of those people where I literally don't know if they cast a man, a woman, a young guy. Forgive me for saying this. No, you know what? I'm not going to say it. I don't know if this is a man or a woman, boy or girl. They're young. They're fairly young, I think. And I don't know if they're supposed to be that way or not, but whatever. Anyway, as a transporter chief, they lost. They lost Nurse Chapel and Dr. Mbenga's signal an hour ago. Don't you think you would have told that to Spock at the time? Like, hey, Captain, we lost the signal of two members of the team, an hour, 5 minutes ago, 2 minutes ago. Maybe you want to go check on them. No, oh, it's an hour. Yeah, they've been missing an hour. Oh, we only told you because you called us. Spock just hangs up. Spock just hangs up on the guy or girl. I don't even know. Spock just hangs up on them. That's the ticket. I feel bad because when I woke up from my coma, there was somebody that looked a lot like that. And I had to call my mom over and ask, is that a man or a woman? I think it turned out it was a woman. I don't know. So anyway, Spock and them have to go try to find Dr. Mbenga. Mbenga is looking through like a sick bay, and there's ion burns everywhere. And he's treating a Klingon, and he's like, yeah, you're lucky your dermal system is redundant. That makes no more sense. That doesn't make any sense. It's like, what, you have two skins? I know they want to do that Klingons have redundant systems, but redundant dermal layers? No, they don't. Anyway, he says, oh, you've treated Klingons before. Where'd you do it? And he doesn't want to say. And then he says the name of a place. He says, you didn't. I know you're lying. If you were there, you'd be dead. He's like, you know what they say about the rain there? It turns red with blood. And the Klingon realizes maybe he is dealing with somebody. And so Dr. Mbenga apparently has PTSD from the war. And Nurse Chapel knows he does and comes over to ask if he's okay. And he's like, no, he's not, but what can he do? And she's like, the war is over, Joseph, which is rare use of his first name. And he's like, yeah, it's never going to be over for me. So Nurse Chapel says the severity of the burns suggests the photon torpedoes are on this ship. So why would they have a Federation ship in the middle of a territorial dispute? And the nurse Chapel's like, oh, use it to attack the Klingons, start the war all over again. We have to warn Enterprise. And Mbenga's like, there's got to be a communication somewhere on the bridge. And she's like, what, do you want to just waltz up to the bridge and ask to use the comm system? And Mbenga pulls out a vial of green liquid, and he's like, we can use this to give us an advantage. And it's basically gives them superpowers. It's literally a drug that makes them as faster and more and stronger than Klingon. It basically makes them Superman. It's what's that? Compound V from The Boys. It makes them superheroes. They take it, their eyes dilate for some reason, and they get super strong, and they even get their own music. So every time they take a punch, you know it's a medically enhanced. It's medicinally enhanced. And so the little 100-pound Nurse Nurse Chapel can take out a 250-pound Klingon with a punch to the face. And Dr. Mbenga, he can just kill with his hands. So they take it. And she says, are you sure you want to do this again? And he's saying no, but he doesn't see a better choice. So obviously this is something he used to do pretty regularly, I guess, during the war. And he just lets the time also slows down for them, I guess. So they let the vials drop to the ground, the glass break, and they go to town. The two of them versus an entire ship of Klingons, and they beat the hell. They beat the hell out of the Klingons. Wave and wave of Klingons, and they are able to take them all down. One punch, Nurse Chapel knocks out Klingons. Mbenga throws them around like they're rag dolls. Not very honorable, but that's fine. That's fine. So we were told that the Federation was working with these Klingons. I've yet to see any Federation people. Oh, and now Dr. Mbenga lifts up one of the Klingons and beats the shit out of him because he's trying to get the answers from him. He's like, who's your leader? How many weapons? What are your plans? And the Klingon's like, I know you have rules against torture. You don't scare me. And Mbenga just starts beating the shit out of him. And Nurse Chapel has to stop him. Says he can't tell us the answers if he's dead. She's like, Joseph. And finally, the guy cracks. He gives out all his info. And he's like, when are we leaving? Whatever, the last thing. He's like, I'm never going to tell you. Where's the command or whatever? A transponder. He's like, I'm never going to tell you. And Mbenga just looks at him and he gives up. He's like, it's on deck 12 or deck 13. And Mbenga knocks him out. And they go to the transponder. And he's like, I thought transponders could only broadcast the ship's name to Federation vessels. And Mbenga's like, it can also do a simple message. So he needs a minute. So Nurse Chapel has to fight 3 Klingons by herself to buy him a minute. Although 2 Klingons was no problem. Oh no, she got through. She got through all 3 Klingons. Now they've got to find a way off the ship. And now more Klingons are coming. Oh, and now these Klingons brought phasers or disruptors. So they jump through a hole in the ceiling, a hole in the floor. And they're on another deck. And they're going to an airlock. And they're running out of the super juice that makes them super powerful, but they've got just enough. Oh no, now Nurse Chapel. Nurse Chapel has been being held by 2 Klingons. Oh, it hurt her hand. It hurt her hand, but Mbenga is still badass. He's ready to kick some ass. Oh, a Klingon steps between him. 2 Klingons, 3 Klingons. And Mbenga can take them all. Oh, skull crack. Mbenga is just kicking ass. He is done. He is all out of bubblegum. Mbenga. Oh man, kick in the face. Mbenga is seriously. Oh, body slam. Yeah, body slam that Klingon. Oh. Well, Mbenga is now coming, and he's got Nurse Chapel, and now they're running from more people, and Nurse Chapel is hot wiring a door, and she closes them, she locks them in. They're in an airlock. They're locked in an airlock. And of course, the Klingons are trying to open it like an animal. They're not trying to open the door like a civilized. You know, just shoot the door or shoot the lock. That always opens the door. Now the ship is moving, I guess, and Mbenga's looking out the window of the airlock, and they see that they're moving. And what does that mean? Are they in space? Are they on the ground? So, new scene, and a D7 warps in. Now the Enterprise is hiding. The Enterprise is hiding in a bunch of goo. There's these, I don't know, maybe they're meteors. Oh, it's interstellar ice. So we're in, they're in low power modes, surrounded by interstellar ice and rock with high internal iron content. Ortega says they look like space junk. She knows enough about Klingons when it's safe to take a breather. They're being hailed on the secure channel, says Uhura. And it's La'an. She's had no luck locating Mbenga. All the contents in the broken circle have gone silent. Oh, and just at that time, I don't know, is that an Akira class? Comes out from the ground behind La'an and flies into space. La'an says holy. Mitchell, that's the Asian lady's name. The Asian lady's name is Mitchell. So it's a crossfield class. What? Crossfield? Wasn't the Discovery a crossfield? Am I forgetting something? Anyway. So Uhura is picking up a pattern. It's Morse code 2. Morse 2 code. It's saying, Enterprise, destroy this ship. So Dr. Mbenga modified the transponder to say, Enterprise, destroy this ship. So Nurse Chao was like, how long until the Klingons get in? And he's like, well, 5 minutes if they have a laser torch, less if they have a grenade. And she's like, we're in space. They're not that stupid. And then Mbenga looks at her. So he's like, look in the lockers, look for an EV suit. So now Spock finally realizes that this was a false flag and they intend to use the ship to attack the Klingon to reignite hostilities. And that Chapel and Mbenga were taken by extremists. So Mitchell is like, well, what if they're still on that ship? And he's like, they realize that it's logical, but we have to destroy the ship. So Mitchell is like, Mrs. Spock, what are your orders? Follow the Federation ship, but don't fire. Stay in range, but don't let the Klingons know we're here. Those orders make no sense. If you're going to be following the other ship, they're going to see you. So Mbenga and Chapel, I think they find a single helmet. There's no EV suit. So Ortega's like, they're being shot. The other Federation ship, the Crossfield class, is firing on the Enterprise. And like, how did the Klingons not notice? So Ortega's like, should I fire back? And Spock is like, no, not yet. Not yet. What are they waiting for? Spock is waiting for his beloved Nurse Chapel. Now they're firing torpedoes, which the Enterprise can easily get around by just spinning in circles. By the way, torpedoes look exactly like phasers. So Mbenga says there's a beacon in the helmet. Oh, so there's a rocket jet, an attitude jet. There's no suit. So he's like, there's a beacon in the helmet and 15 seconds. He can use the 15 seconds of consciousness to get away from the ship. She's like, we're going to die. He's like, no, it'll take a minute to freeze to death. And we'll have 15 seconds of consciousness before we pass out. So it's enough time to get him away from the ship. So they're literally, the plan is to, without a spacesuit, jump into space, move away from the ship, and hope that they can be beamed up in the nick of time before they die. So the D7 comes in and it's charging weapons. And Nurse Chapel wraps her arms around Dr. Mbenga, almost looks like she's going to kiss him, but of course they don't. And she's like, I can't believe this is how we're going to die. They're like, Spock, it's now or never. So now Spock gives the order to fire the photon torpedoes. Just as they do, Mbenga opens the airlock door and they get shot. They get shot into space, I mean, he didn't need to use any rockets to get away. Spock closes his eyes and the ship gets destroyed. The Crossfield class gets destroyed, and he's afraid he's killed his beloved nurse Chapel, and the ship is falling in space. I mean, why is it falling? So, oh, there's a transport. There's a signal. So Spock says, lock on to the transport signal and beam them up. You would think they would just have discretion. Okay, the transporter should have discretion to beam somebody on board when they know that their crew members are missing, that they don't have to wait for Spock to give the order. Because anyway, Spock goes to the transporter room and he's giving CPR himself. Nurse Chapel is out. So he's saying, don't die, don't die, do not die. And he is giving her CPR and she wakes up. Meanwhile, Dr. M'Benga was conscious the whole time, but neither of them could move. And Nurse Chapel reaches up, touches his face, and says, why do you have to be so rough? And now the medical staff finally made it. So now the Klingon captain is saying, why were you hiding? Why were you fighting your own ship? So Spock tells him that it wasn't his ship. It was a ship that was trying to be used to start a war. The Klingon says, why should I believe you? And Spock says, well, it makes no sense. Why would I lie? And he's like, you know Vulcans can't lie. He's like, I think you can. I don't trust that. And so Spock is like, listen, let's meet in person. And so the Klingon is like, that's fine. I look into your eyes, face to face. And he said, oh, Spock says we can conclude this discussion over a barrel of blood wine. And he's like, you drink blood wine? He says, this is something I must see. You're no typical Vulcan. Spock says he's been known to drink blood wine. And Spock would say, it would seem I'm not a typical Vulcan. And this is the scene from the trailer with Spock drinking blood wine. And all the Klingons are happy to see a Vulcan drink blood wine. And everything works out. Oh, and there is the chief engineer, Pelia. She's drinking the blood wine too. She says her Klingon is a little rusty, but did she say, may your blood scream? He says, yes, it's a Klingon toast. She says, well, thank you for getting me out of the academy. She says, Spock says, are you actually Latheran? She's like, oh, a couple of drinks, you get personal. Huh, Flyboy? She says, I am. Spock says, I've always been fascinated by your people, how you managed to live on Earth among humans, undetected to the 22nd century. Actually, he says, other humans. She says, did you know your mother was the first person I came out to? He did not. He says, and now you are teaching engineering at Starfleet Academy. She says, taught. Says, you asked why I helped you. He's like, do you know what the worst thing is about living almost forever? Spock says, the loss of those you love. She's like, oh, you're sweet. You're a sweet Vulcan. He's like, no, it's not so much. He's like, don't get me wrong. There's a pain shared by everybody for losing the people you love. But the worst thing about living forever is boredom. Boredom. And there's no shortage. Boredom doesn't exist. on your ship, and I like it. So how about I be your new chief engineer? I want to be. So the Klingon comes back and asks Spock, have another drink of blood wine? He says, please. And they're like, to the Vulcan who acts nothing like a Vulcan. And then La'an is back, and she's with the little girl she saved. And the little girl's so happy. And she's asking La'an, where is she going to go? Where is she going to go now? And La'an is basically going to go home. The girl says, La'an tells the girl to stay out of trouble. She says, I will if you will. But where is La'an going to go? La'an knows where she's going. She's going home to the Enterprise. She doesn't say it out loud. So finally, Spock has that conversation with Robert April over comms. And April's like, I explicitly gave you orders not to go. And Spock is like, please, sir, can you lower the vibe of your voice? And April's like, oh my God, are you drunk? Are you hungover? I mean, these are lines copied right out of the Orville. These are lines that were copied right out of the Orville. So Spock is like, listen, we got a peace treaty. He's like, that, we just got lucky. And April's like, you got lucky. We could have just as well been at war. Spock is like, listen, I followed my gut. I'll accept whatever punishment you feel is just. And Robert April says, guess what? That hangover is your punishment. But next time, and there better not be a next time, it'll be your commission. Now get Enterprise home. So Spock just has a headache. Also Nurse Chapel is laying in sick bay, virtually unconscious, asleep, I guess. And Spock, in a totally not creepy way, is just standing over her, watching her sleep. And Dr. Mbenga comes over and says, oh, I didn't hear you come in. And instead of saying, Spock, it's weird to watch somebody sleep, especially, a woman. He's like, are you all right? And Spock says, yes, he's okay. And Mbenga puts his hand on Spock and says, she'll be fine. And Spock is about to cry. He's breaking down. His eyes are red. He says, I have no words for what I feel. You should, Spock. Dr. Mbenga, I thought he was going to give her the birds and the bees conversation. So Spock goes back to his quarters to play that guitar thing. I know it has a name. I'm not looking it up. The Enterprise is flying at warp. Granted, it should only take 15 minutes to get back to Starbase. So back on the Starbase, another admiral is talking with Robert April. Says, oh, you let Spock off easy. And he's like, without him, we might have had to be fighting two fronts at the same time. It's like, uh-oh, two fronts at the same time. He says, even if he didn't know it, plus he's one of our best. And if this war happens, we're going to need every good officer we got. And we look at a map, And there's a map. There's a planet called Glenuntir, and it says probable object identification. And I go, oh no, what is this? Could it be the Romulans? What is it? What is it? And just at the very end of the episode, Gorn attack ship. It is a Gorn attack ship. And that's it. Actually, excuse me. There's one more. The episode technically not over. As this is, I guess, the first episode of Star Trek to air since the death of Nichelle Nichols. It says, for Nichelle Nichols, obviously, Uhura in the original series. For Nichelle, who was the first through the door and showed us the stars, hailing frequencies forever open. Honestly, I thought they could do better, but it's nice they did something. So that's the end of the episode. So in the first episode of the second season, we have a new species that's lived on Earth for hundreds or thousands of years. They pass themselves off as humans. Obviously, they have a tremendous amount of wisdom. We never heard of them later for whatever reason. But fine. I don't know. Pelia, I was hoping for more from Pelia. I really was. We'll give him another chance. Ortega's pretty much the same character. I remember it doesn't get a whole lot of lines. Not a lot to do this episode at all. La'an, I think, gets too many lines. Uhura is fine. It's just not the Uhura we remember. Dr. Mbenga, he got some serious character development. I don't know it's the same Mbenga from season 1. Like, he doesn't seem to have the same sensibilities as Mbenga from season 1. And honestly, I don't even know, was this the first time we find his name is Joseph or not? Because obviously Joseph is my real first name. I feel like I would have remembered that if I had heard it before. Nurse Chapel, pretty much the same, although I would say Spock seems more into Nurse Chapel than Nurse Chapel is into Spock at this point. Una was barely in it. Captain Pike, barely in it. And Spock is even less Spock than he was last season. This is not the Spock. This Spock has gone farther away from Leonard Nimoy Spock. You would think he'd be getting closer to Leonard Nimoy Spock, but he's getting further away. So, and I'm not a big fan of finding out that Dr. Mbenga is the one who introduced Spock to his Vulcan guitar thingy. I also don't like how, like, every character seems to be in a perpetual state of existential crisis. I really didn't like how rude they were to the men who were on the ship, like especially Uhura, that scene. A fucking ensign. An ensign orders a guy who is clearly her rank superior away so she could set up a backup comm system. Well, if you want to set, you should have set that up a little sooner. You should have set that up a little sooner. We got this whole thing where they do not understand how time and distances work, how it needs to take more than 3 days to go across the fucking quadrant, or else these stories really mean nothing. Right? What does it mean if you can cross the quadrant in 2 days on a shuttle? Then, you know, every ship could be anywhere within a day or two. It doesn't, you know, we have 50 years of stories where, you know, the Enterprise or some other ship, you know, the Defiant is the only ship in range. That doesn't make sense in a universe where a shuttlecraft can transverse the Federation in 2.5 days. I was bored. I was bored at times watching this episode. Like, I legit wanted to just fast forward at times, and that is pretty damning. So honestly, not only was this not a great episode of Star Trek, this was not a great episode or even a good episode of Strange New Worlds. And again, they're tripling down on the Gorn being a thing when the Gorn shouldn't be a thing. So even on the Strange New World scale, I'm going to give this episode a 3. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is a 3. And I'm not being, I don't think I'm being, I'm not being excessive. I'm not trying to just like, oh, yes, you know, make a statement with it. This is just a legit 3 out of 10 for me. I don't foresee ever wanting to rewatch this episode. Not even in the least. Well, I hope you enjoyed my review. If you've watched it yourself, you know, or not, let me know in the comments what you think. I will try to be back next Thursday with another look, another review at episode 2, which is going to be the trial of Una. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe. We lost a lot of subscribers in the last few weeks when I didn't have any reviews to put out. You know, I do live streams Mondays and Fridays. Check it out. And Kapla all, Bird out.